What up, folks? What's going on? This is my third attempt at recording the intro for this fucking podcast because I just keep mumbling and stumbling all over it, more so than usual. Okay, welcome to episode number 49 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. In this episode, I speak about UFC 199, which was one of the unexpected best cards that I've seen in a while, and a couple of documentaries and a movie that I've recently seen, which are Citizen 4, which is the biographical documentary about NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, and when he first reached out to and met journalist Glenn Greenwald, which is who he entrusted with his whistleblown information. The next one is Where to Invade Next, a documentary by Michael Moore, where he, quote, invades other countries to steal their good ideas in relation to health, education, work, etc., in hopes of bringing them back to America and having them implemented here. And pretty much highlighting lofty ideas that work elsewhere. And, why are we not doing them here at home? Like universal health care for real and a bunch of other stuff that I'll get into later. The movie that I saw is The Martian with Matt Damon, where he plays an astronaut that is accidentally stranded on Mars, yes, the planet, and has to try to survive with limited food and resources. So if you guys haven't seen that movie or those documentaries and are worried about like spoilers or anything like that, then this probably won't be the episode for you. I can't foresee anything I'm gonna like quote unquote spoil, but whatever, the conversation just flows, so skip it if you're worried about that type of shit. And what else? Then I'm going to speak about an epic Benjamin Franklin, yes, that guy, prank, where he passed himself off as a mid-aged widow, then the type of trouble he gets into thereafter. And lastly, I just finished reading a book, or listening to a book rather, on Audible. Shout out to Audible. Which the books are free, by the way. All those, Audible is a popular podcast sponsor. Audible, reach out to me. You should sponsor the Spun Today podcast. But, they are a podcast sponsor, and a lot of popular podcasts have them as a sponsor. And they're, what you get when you sign up at Audible, which I think you get if you sign up directly, but if you use like one of the promo codes of like one of the podcasts, then instead of getting one free book, you get 2 free books. And it's true, it's like no bullshit, no strings attached. You can allegedly sign up with a couple different Amazon accounts and get a couple free books. And also, I've heard that when you do cancel the free trial period, within the 30 days, they offer you the same, instead of paying, I think, after the trial period, it's like $9.99 a month. They offer you, I think, 2 months at $9.99, so you get it like half price, and then you say no to that, and then they offer it to you for 99 cents a month for like 6 months or something like that. And they give you another free book on top of that. So on top of the 2 that you get free for signing up, you get a third one if you do that. Or so I've heard. Anyway, one of the books I recently listened to is Mindset by a PhD psychologist and professor at Stanford, and one of the leading researchers in motivation, Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck. And I'm going to be speaking about that as well. All right, so UFC 199 was a really dope card, and I called it a surprisingly good card, I guess, because I don't know, they weren't really too many fights that I was like looking forward to on there. The main one that I was looking forward to, and the only one really, was Cruz and Faber, just because of so much. I really like Dominic Cruz, and so much built up animosity between the two over years, and this is like the rubber match. You know, one of them won their first matchup, the other one won the other one. Dominic Cruz was like out of the game for 4 years, I think. In 4 years, he only fought twice, 2 or 3 times, because he was hurt, but he was a champion, and he never really lost his belt. And just Faber's whole camp, from TJ Dillashaw, who was a champ, excuse me, that Dominic Cruz, when he came back, he beat and won his title back, which he never really lost again. And then the falling out between TJ Dillashaw and Uriah Faber and Team Alpha Male, and the fact that Dominic Cruz has beat a couple guys from Team Alpha Male, and Dominic Cruz camp versus their camp, it's just like a whole like soap opera type thing that like draws you in between these two. And it's been going on for many years, and like a decade or more, I think, since they were at WEC. Anyway, that was the fight that I was looking forward to the most. Now, everything else, it was kind of like whatever. And a lot of the fights were surprisingly really good, or maybe not surprisingly. You know, I'm no fucking aficionado. I'm just a fan of watching the fights. So I was very pleasantly surprised with this card. And from the prelims, I want to say that I saw Miller and Cáceres, Bruce Leroy, Cole Miller and Alex Cáceres. And if this is the one that I'm remembering correctly, Bruce Leroy had a very short, he took the fight on short notice, but he dominated it and he looked really good. I don't remember if it was this fight or the fight before that I saw with Bruce Leroy. But if it was this one, that was dope. But then I missed the rest of the prelims. I didn't see Clay Guida, which I wanted to see, versus Ortega. I know Ortega won. Guida's getting up there in age. How old is he now? Or at least in maybe not necessarily. Well, I think he is old, but for the sport, like in terms of like fights and stuff like that, he has, looking at his record right now, 45 fights under him. That's super old in fighting years, And but I like Clay Guida and his style, his just like push forward style of fighting. And the fact that I always say that I want to rewatch this fight, but I don't want to be let down by going back to it and it not living up to like my memory of it. But I remember a fight between Clay Guida and Diego Sanchez, had to be like 5, 6, 7 years ago. That was, as I remember it, one of the best fights I've ever seen. Probably the best fight that I've ever seen. And yeah, I don't want to ruin that, but I should rewatch that fight. Anyway, I missed that one, and I saw the Poirier fight, which was good. Poirier looked really good against Bobby Green, and he looked way better than he did versus Conor. And I know he's had a couple fights since then. He's on a bit of a streak, and he looked good. He looked good in his fight. Then the Dan Henderson and Hector Lombard fight was sick. That shit was so cool and so just like an epic way to go out if Dan Henderson does retire, which many people say, including himself, in the post-fight interview in the Octagon, said that this is possibly his last fight. What a way to go out. It was pretty much, he's like 45 or 46 years old, Dan Henderson. 45, I think, like of age. And has, again, like Clay Guida level number of fights under his belt. And he was going against Hector Lombard, which is just a beast. And Hector Lombard is very, very... They both have, obviously, huge knockout power. Dan Henderson is known for that. Hector Lombard is also known for that. But Hector Lombard is more known also for, not maybe more known, but he's also very known for gassing out because he's so muscular that he just gasses out quickly, usually after the first round. And in the first round, he clips Dan Henderson, hurts him bad. He's wailing on him. The fight is pretty much, I thought it was about to get stopped, and Dan Henderson kind of like pulled through that like melee from Hector Lombard, got through the fight, got through that round, got pretty much like saved by the bell, kind of got out of it, and then saved by the bell like at the same time. And then when he came out in the second round, he caught Hector Lombard and just knocked him the fuck out in true Dan Henderson style. And it was the first time that his entire family was there, his wife, his kids. I think he has like 3 or 4 kids, and they were there to like witness that. And he came back in that spectacular fashion, won in a knockout where he was the underdog, if I'm not mistaken. And what a way to go out. If he does choose to go out that way, he absolutely should. And he's, a pioneer of the sport. He's been there from like the beginning of it, when UFC was not what it is today. He's an absolute Hall of Famer right there. And then you have Holloway and Lamas. And Max Holloway is sick. He is ranked right now number 3 in the division. He's been on a 9-fight winning streak, and his last loss, and he only has 3 all time, but his last loss was against Conor McGregor, and this was back in 2013 before the huge, like Conor McGregor hype train started. And since then, he's had a 9-fight win streak, and just wins in like spectacular KO fashion or submissions, or just puts on very entertaining fights, which this one absolutely was. He, at the very end, it was I want to say he won every round. I could be completely wrong though, but in terms of, like, I didn't see like the judges like scorecards or anything like that, but in terms of like what I saw, it was like a back and forth like slugfest type of fight, but he was like dominating. Like if it was a unanimous decision, actually let me check. I got this shit open right now, right? Why guess? If it was a unanimous decision, I wouldn't be surprised. And let's see. Scroll down. Yeah, unanimous decision. So he dominated every round. And at the end, he has everything to lose because, he knows he's ahead in the scorecards. And in the last, I think, like 10 or 15 seconds of the fight, he and Lamas stand, agree, like you see them have this like interaction in the middle of the octagon, agree, and this has to be like some fighting shit, agree to stand their ground, like they point at the ground, like we can't move our feet type shit. This is like the interpretation that I got from it, plus together with the commentary, obviously. They agree to plant their feet. They're not allowed to move their feet, and they have to just slug it out for the remaining time until the third round bell rings. Both of them agreed to it and just slugged it the fuck out, back and forth. It was like 5 or 10 seconds to end the fight, and he has everything to lose, but still was down to like a scrap like that, and it was like just sick to see. Like, holy shit. As like a fight fan, you find that type of shit entertaining, you know what I mean? Like a complete slugfest, like some Clay Guida, fucking Diego Sanchez type shit. Then the fight that I was looking forward to the most, which was Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber, turned out to be a masterful performance by Dominic Cruz. Completely backed up everything I like Dominic Cruz a lot because aside from the fact that he's such like an elusive, skilled fighter, he's kind of like a I don't know, like a stand on his own, backs up all, walks the walk but doesn't talk too much of the talk. You know what I mean? Like he talks the talk when he has to, but he's not like that cocky type, but he's the confident type, which there's a very fine line between those two, which I'm going to speak more about with the next fight. But he's definitely a fighter that I enjoy watching and that I am happy rooting for. And Faber I've always liked, always been an entertaining fighter, and a guy that if he was fighting anybody other than Dominic Cruz, I would be rooting for. But I'm happy that Cruz came out with the W, and I'm looking forward to a possible super fight maybe down the line with Mighty Mouse, Demetrius Johnson, which would be dope. Because they got to do something between those two divisions. But Cruz does have a lot of people like waiting in the wings. Another fight against TJ Dillashaw, give him a rematch. Makes sense also. And obviously I'm no UFC fucking matchmaker, but there's a bunch of fights that you could put on with Dominic Cruz. Hopefully he just stays healthy. And last but not least, Luke Rockhold and Michael Bisping. I'm not upset that Luke Rockhold lost, and this is what I was referring to when I just mentioned the cocky and confidence thing. Luke Rockhold was cocky as fuck, and Michael Bisping is actually known for being the person that like talks shit. He was like the Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor, but on obviously like not on that like level. And I've always said it about Conor McGregor also. He's more, to me, and I don't know exactly how to describe it. I could just, I don't know, like a feeling that I get, a sense. Conor's confident, not cocky, if that makes sense. And I know a lot of people would probably disagree with me on that, but Luke Rockhold is cocky, not confident, or overconfident, if you will. And I don't know, there's like a condescending demeanor to people like that, and they just, I don't know, they rub me the wrong way. And it fucked him over during this fight. He completely, Michael Bisping took the fight on 12 weeks notice, 12 days notice, and because Weidman got hurt. And Luke Rockhold fought Michael Bisping once before and beat him. He submitted him in the first round, and he actually, it was like a controversial type victory because he did submit him fair and square, but he also like headbutted the shit out of him to the point where Michael Bisping since has like a fucked up eye. His retina is like detached or some shit, and he has some oil in his eye, and it looks kind of like fucking freaky if you see his eye, but his left or right eye or some shit like completely just doesn't work. And he's also one of those guys that he's always been like I don't know what his actual official rank was, but he's always been like a known guy, like a top guy in his division. Just never got a title shot though. And he recently fought Anderson Silva and beat Anderson Silva, but obviously Anderson Silva is not the same Anderson Silva as he was back in the day. And which is one of the biggest, I guess, this is considered one of the biggest upsets because of the fact that Luke Rockhold is in his prime right now, as opposed to, for example, Anderson Silva when he lost to Chris Weidman. He was like at like the pinnacle of his prime, about, obviously in hindsight you can say now that he was about to start regressing, but he got clipped by Weidman and was never the same ever since. And, the second fight, he broke his leg against Weidman. And Weidman won a bunch of fights after that and then got taken out by Luke Rockhold. And Luke Rockhold was supposed to fight Weidman again now in the rematch. Weidman got hurt in camp. Bisping stepped up to the plate with 12 days notice. As a complete underdog, Rockhold was, being that he's in his prime, and he took out Weidman, who's also in his prime, prior to getting hurt, and was supposed to just, beat Bisping once before, was supposed to just run through him like nothing. And he acted like it, like he had his chin up in the ring, his hands down. He was, just like Anderson Silva did against fucking Weidman, and he fucked up. He got clipped. And Michael Bisping just fucked him up. He caught him with the left hook, and he followed that up with a couple other ones, just wailed on him and knocked him out. And he is the current champ. And he doesn't feel bad about letting Rockhold know it. And, he's the type to, I don't know, they have like good sportsmanship, I think, like the Conor McGregors and the like Michael Bispings, and the, I guess, like other, what I would consider like true champions, because they congratulate people like when they win, and they don't make excuses when they lose and shit like that. Whereas I feel like the cockier, condescending types are like, oh no, that was like a fluke victory, and do make excuses, you know what I mean? And I could be completely fucking way off. I don't know any of these motherfuckers personally, obviously, but that's just the impressions that I get, and that's how I feel about it. So that was a pretty dope fucking UFC card that was on last weekend. No, the weekend before last. I'm recording this on June 14th, 2016. And this was the fight card from June 4th. Alright, so that's pretty much it on UFC stuff. And, actually, one more tidbit, because I know this has been spoken about ad nauseum for anyone who's into like UFC or like Rogan's podcast or The Fighter and the Kid or anything related to UFC. The controversy between Ariel Helwani, a reporter at the MMA Weekly, and he has the MMA Hour podcast as well. He and the UFC were pretty much in the news because Ariel Helwani broke two stories prior to the UFC being able to break them, and they had, they planned to release them. So the UFC wound up banning him as a, from like the journalist press corps, and accusing him of like insider trading, I guess, and fucking leaking information prior to when it should have been available to the public, because they put money behind marketing, and they wanted to announce the fact that Brock Lesnar is going to do a one-time fight, is returning to the UFC for a one-time fight against Mark Hunt at UFC 200. And also there was another bit of news that he leaked before then, and pretty much the UFC kicked him out. He was at UFC 199, and at the main event, they kicked him out pretty much and told him that he can't come back, and they decredentialized him, whatever you call it, when you're not allowed to be part of the like official press corps anymore, and like they blocked him on all the, like the UFC accounts, the Dana White's Twitter account and stuff like that. They all blocked him, and a whole bunch of like that type of shit. And there's obviously 2 to 3 sides to every story. And, you can listen to the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani and listen to his heartfelt side of it, where he actually like cried and stuff like that, and speaking about like journalism and how it's his life and livelihood and stuff like that, but that he's not going to back down and blah, blah, blah. And the, I guess, comments that the UFC has put forth on why they did what they did, And there's merit on both sides, to be honest, in my opinion. And the decision has since been overturned, and Ariel Helwani is now back in able to report on the UFC, and he's in a UFC insider, quote unquote. But that was, I guess, related news to UFC 199, and something that I felt was just like a fucked up situation, because on one side, the UFC is a private organization. It's not a public company. It's not a NFL, for example, or an NBA. It is a private promotion, and it's pretty much I think in like the Fighter and the Kid podcast, if I'm not mistaken, Brendan Schaub mentioned how it's like owning a restaurant. If the owner doesn't want you there, you're not there. And it's not, they don't have to, give PC reasons for it or against it. It just is what it is. They have autonomy over that or over it. Ariel Helwani himself also agrees to this. He knows that it's a privilege to be part of that like UFC core of reporters, not a right, but at the same time stood his ground to the fact that he was true to his journalistic integrity, and he did not leak stories that were not verified and by multiple sources, and that was his duty as a journalist to put out information about the sport that he obviously loves to cover. And there were arguments also about people saying to Ariel, if the UFC kind of like cuts you off, go do other type of sports journalism. And I don't know, I don't like that I don't know, mentality, I guess you could call it, or that like train of thought, I guess, because it's like telling a brain surgeon that he can no longer practice brain surgery and to go do podiatry. And it's like, they're both doctors, but it's different, you know what I mean? And he obviously has a passion and love for the fight game, and he is one of the, if not the best. He's the only reporter that I know by name, and I listen to his podcast, and he's super informative. Fighters always go on his podcast and give their perspective on things and speak about fights, and he does a bunch of the post-fight interviews, and he is the UFC insider, the MMA insider. It would be a shame to have lost his input on the culture, in my opinion. And I said, I tweeted at Dana White and Lorenzo, and I'm pretty sure that my tweet is the one that made them overturn the decision, along with the other thousands and thousands of people that were probably doing the same thing. But I tweeted, and this is pretty much how I feel, that if he, and he did it in a credible way, if he released information prior to them releasing the information, which is the discrepancy, right? It's not, you released this information that we never wanted to get out. It was, you beat us to the punch and released this information before we could. That's your bad as, company owners and running a company and stuff like that. If you don't want something to leak out, don't let it leak out. Something's fucked up on your end that allowed that information to get leaked out. You can, or should be able to, apparently you can't, but you should be able to keep shit on the wraps if you want to keep shit on the wraps. You want to book Brock Lesnar to a deal or whatever, have 3 people in the room, or 4 people in the room, whatever. Dana White, Lorenzo, Brock Lesnar, and whoever his agent is, and that's it. And nobody else in the know, or something like that. I mean, I'm sure it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but shit gets hairy when you have a shitload of people involved, and the more people that you have involved, the more people obviously that can, leak information, and that did. But in my opinion, it's not wrong information. It's not like felonious shit or anything like that. It's true, it's accurate, it was verified by multiple sources prior to it being released, which is in line with journalistic integrity and like rules, and everyone that read that and that has since come to know about Brock Lesnar fighting at UFC 200, and the other news that he quote unquote leaked out before the UFC did, which I think was the fact that Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor inked the deal for a rematch. I think UFC 201 or 202. Everybody doesn't give a fuck where the information came from. But is happy that those deals are done, and that's ultimately what should matter, I think. And you have to realize, I think, when you are, let's say, from the UFC's perspective and from Ariel's perspective, they have like a symbiotic relationship, right? The UFC obviously could exist without Ariel Helwani, and Ariel Helwani could exist without the UFC, but Ariel's main content is from the UFC, and Ariel Helwani is arguably one of the biggest mouthpiece journalists that is a mouthpiece for the sport that he's reporting on, and that counts for something too. That counts for a lot, in my opinion. But yeah, whatever. I'm glad that he's back with the UFC. And like I said, you guys can check out his podcast, The MMA Hour, if you want to listen to his like 3-hour explanation on it where he cries and it's like pretty heartfelt stuff. And also, a bunch of like articles and stuff like that on the UFC's, quote official positions on the matter as well. Next, speaking of journalistic integrity, is Citizen 4, which is the biographical documentary about NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden and when he first met Glenn Greenwald, which was pretty dope. I thought it was like a reenactment movie type of thing, but it's not. There is a movie like that, but this one is a documentary, and it has real footage of Edward Snowden and his they show like the interactions between him and Glenn Greenwald way before any of this stuff ever broke. They were recording it from the get-go, and their like email exchanges and like where to meet and stuff like that, and they were meeting at a hotel. And it's interesting to see. And Edward Snowden pretty much whistleblew or told on, quote unquote, the NSA and their practices of collecting metadata, or pretty much everything and anything that we text or say or whatever on our phones, and they store it. And there's an argument between it's just metadata, it's not like screenshots of your actual text messages and dick pics and whatever the fuck else you are like into. But Snowden points out how that metadata pretty much could be broken down into all that information. You know what I mean? Like, if you know how to fuck with the algorithms and what have you. Like, I'm not a tech genius over here, but it's pretty much what he is stating as his position, which, if I'm not mistaken, has been corroborated since then. And the documentary goes into that huge facility in Utah, which has and continues to be built, and the most massive supercomputer of the government type of thing, where it continues to store anyone and everyone's metadata it's scary shit. And I always refer to, I know I've mentioned this quote like a billion times, but the Benjamin Franklin quote: "He who gives up essential liberty for safety deserves neither liberty or safety." And this was all allowed. Basically, the government being able to do this was allowed and passed under the guise of the Patriot Act, which was introduced after 9/11, when everyone was pretty much on board with, look at everything and anything, because we have to make sure we get like all these damn terrorists. And it's just been, people are people. They use what they can to their advantage, and we have to be realistic about the fact that our government and our like politicians and corporate leaders are not necessarily altruistic beings, and looking out for the best interests of everyone. People are people. People are corrupt. Could be fucked up. There's bad people. There's good people. There's crazy people. And all those different types of people exist in all different facets of our society, whether it is the government, the federal government, state governments, local governments, corporations and shit like that. And you have psychopaths and sociopaths, and the whole gamut of people are in all these facets. And we can't just have this ideological projections of like who's running shit. You know what I mean? That's why I think people like Edward Snowden that took this huge hit of pretty much his freedom, because he's in like Russia right now with no extradition, because when he comes here he's going to get tried for espionage, which technically I guess it is, but because it's like, is it any different from Hillary Clinton and her whole email scandal thing, where if you break it down to its most basic level, you have two people, Hillary Clinton, Edward Snowden, and both people have access to classified information. One of them leaked it out as responsibly as he felt he could through a journalist, Glenn Greenwald, who through the protections of journalism and doing things right the way he's supposed to, and vetting the information and disseminating it through the proper channels of journalism. Edward Snowden felt that was the best way to go with that, versus Hillary Clinton that had, again, classified information on a computer, on personal emails, which was hacked by some dude in not Russia, but like, I don't know, one of those like European, Russian sounding countries. Somebody did hack Hillary Clinton's emails and had access to a shit ton of, hacked by a Romanian hacker, after her breaking the State Department's rules of not having, certain classified emails and shit like that on her personal emails, which at first I thought it was just like a whatever bullshit type of political like side thing that they're making a big fuss about nothing, but which on some level I guess I still feel that way, but on another level it's like, why is it a different set of rules for her as opposed to Snowden? You know what I mean? When if you compare them directly, what she did is worse, I think, than what Snowden did. Anyway, it's an interesting documentary, and another good takeaway from it was it was pretty cool to see how the Guardian and Glenn Greenwald, seeing like that side of it, like how they wrote that story, how they framed that story, and you get to see it from its inception of those meetings, secret meetings in hotel rooms and shit. And that was an interesting angle to see the situation from. The next documentary that I saw is Where to Invade Next. Oh, Citizen 4, by the way, I didn't torrent it, if I remember correctly, because I don't do that. but it's available either on Netflix or on HBO Go if you guys want to check it out. The next one that I saw was Where to Invade Next, which is, again, a documentary, the latest by Michael Moore, which I like Michael Moore. And he gets a lot of shit for being, like uber fucking left-wing liberal and for being biased, which I don't know, I guess I get the argument, but at the same time, it's like, duh, what else is it, like, what's he gonna be? He's gonna side with the side that he feels he sides with. He's not going to be, I think, completely objective. And like, people give him shit, for example, like if he interviews 10 people and 8 of them say no and 2 of them say yes, he'll show the 2 people that say yes and say, and not show the ones that say no and say, see, look, everybody says yes. Like, he's criticized for that. I don't know of any evidence of that, or but I wouldn't even know how to know of that evidence, you know what I mean? Or how to, like, prove or disprove that. But whatever, that's the flack that he gets. I enjoy his documentaries. They, take everything with a grain of salt, or shitloads of grains of salt. Gets a big sea salt fucking shaker and have yourself a sprinkle of it whenever you get information from anyone, including Michael Moore or anyone else, because everybody has their own biases and slants and opinions, right? So everything is going through filters before it gets to you, and it's your job to unfilter it as best you could and pick out the fucking gems that you can from it. But it was an entertaining and interesting documentary where he goes to a bunch of different countries. He goes to Italy to speak about their like corporate structure and how employees get 2 months, I think, or a month paid vacation every year, mandatory, and their work life is much less stress-free. And they interview like CEO of, I want to say Ferrari, but I'm not positive that it was Ferrari. But it was some car or motorcycle company, and also like a designer, like a well-known designer as well. And they go to their like factories and they interview the workers, and how all the workers get to leave at 12 for lunch, and they come back at 2, and everybody pretty much goes home and they cook and they meet with their family, and then they go back to work at 2 and then leave work at 5, and everybody's happier and blah blah blah. And he shows like that type of corporate structure, as opposed to like our jobs now, where we fucking work more, don't have as many like paid days off, and paternity leave, mandatory paternity leaves, which is like something in the works of getting passed, which by if the past is any indication of the future, should be passed by like 2028, where you get like paid fucking paternity leave like as a mandatory type of thing. And it's like a night and day type of difference. Now obviously any of these, like, the biggest criticism is certain things work in other countries because they're much less populated, or there's 350 million of us versus Italy's fucking, I don't know, 8 people or whatever it is. But damn, I'm not knowledgeable enough in that realm to know if something like that is scalable to this degree. But can we do that shit like in Queens or something? What else? He also, one of the coolest, and this is something that I think we could do, and or at least might not be able to do it exactly, but at least take the premise from it and introduce that into our schools, which is the fact that he goes to this like elementary school in France, and at lunch, the kids have like a chef that comes out and brings the lunch to the table, like some first class fucking flying type of shit, and kind of like the staff of the school cafeteria bringing out food, and it's, real forks and knives and plates, real plates and cups, and there's no juice, there's no soda, there's none of that shit, fucking filled with sugar shit. It's just water, and it's meals with like portions, like appetizers, salad, cheese at the end, and they're French, and like fucking good gourmet looking meals. Like that's actually how they framed it. Like they showed like these foods being prepared with fucking garnishes and shit like that, and then they say, what 5-star restaurant do you think this is from? Oh, this is from like PS 108 in fucking France or whatever. And like I said, I don't know how doable, doing some gourmet shit like that is on such a much larger scale, even though we spend more money per capita than on education than any of these other countries. But anyway, the main takeaway that I say that we could implement, and I think like immediately, is that they said, like they interviewed the like chef and the staff there, and they were saying that lunchtime isn't a free period. It's literally a course that each student takes every day, and they teach them about foods, and they teach them about nutrition, they teach them about sugars, and they teach them about balanced meals and sharing and like all that type of shit. They literally frame lunchtime into a class, like a mandatory class where they have to learn about food and stuff. And it was so sad to see, like Michael Moore showed them pictures of like common school lunches here, and they showed them like pizzas and sloppy joes and stuff like that. And if you just look at the kids' faces, you can't make this shit up. They were all like in amazement, but like sad and grossed out at the same time. And like one of them acts like, they eat that, and it's just like, wow, that's such an interesting like juxtaposition to see. And I think that's such a interesting fundamental approach that would pay off in spades, I think, by just changing the mindset of that, like how we approach that lunchtime, and teach it as a course, and kill two birds with one stone, instead of just throwing kids into a room and slopping shit on their plates like you do for prisoners. Fucking teach them about what they're eating and putting into their bodies. 'Cause it's fucked up, yo. Like I'm a product of New York City public schools. I can tell you firsthand. I literally until I started getting like into podcasts and hearing nutritionists and reading different articles that I was pointed to and books and stuff like that. Like for a very long time, in a shamefully long time into like adulthood, I can honestly tell you I did not eat vegetables. Like my only vegetables that I would eat was like lettuce and tomatoes on burgers. Like literally, like I'm not saying, oh yeah, I would have a salad like once a month. Like literally zero. I would drink no water whatsoever. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not ODing. I'm not bullshitting. I would, drink juice and soda and stuff like that. And my mentality was, if my body needs water, it'll ask me for water. Duh. And 2, it was, fucking iced tea is liquid, so there has to be water in there. So my body's getting whatever water it needs, because if not, I would die. And it's fucking sad. And you know what? In a sense, I was right, because eventually you do die at fucking in your 40s or some shit like that, or 50s from diabetes and heart disease and shit like that, when you continue that type of lifestyle and trend and stuff like that, and you're not informed about what you're putting into your body, and you're not cognizant of it. So I think that would be a dope and interesting approach. Check that out. I got that on, I don't know if I said this already, but I saw this on YouTube, actually. You could rent or buy movies on YouTube now, which I didn't know. I don't know how long that's been a thing, but I decided to rent it. It was like $3 or $4, and you rent it and you have it for like a month or something like that. And it's pretty dope, and I recommend it if you guys want to check it out. Then I saw the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, and it was a pretty good movie. I see now it was nominated and I think won a Golden Globe for like best comedy or something like that, or comedic work. And a lot of people were like poo-pooing that, I guess. And I laughed. I laughed watching that movie. And it was an entertaining movie. It was cool. I like shit about space. I like Matt Damon. It was funny. It was interesting. It was kind of predictable. I guess like throughout the whole thing, you kind of know what's going to happen. Somebody, he within the first few minutes is stranded on Mars. They showed a bunch or gave away a lot during the previews of how he started planting shit, and you pretty much piece together fairly quickly that he needs to do that in order to survive, and he needs to ration his food, and it's just going to show him doing that for that type of shit for an hour, and shit fucking up, and then fixing things, and then people from Earthlings going back to save him, basically. I heard something in a related interview with Elon Musk, which I think I mentioned in the last episode, but in a related interview where, I mean, obviously you have to suspend disbelief for a bunch of the shit because it's a movie, and that's what you do at movies, right? And but Elon Musk said candidly, but he said that the movie is about 75 to 80% scientifically accurate, and then they take stretches and liberties with certain things, but a lot of it is actually scientifically accurate, supposedly. All right, so just a couple last things to cover before I let you fuckers go. And the first one is Caitlyn Jenner before Caitlyn Jenner was Benjamin Franklin. Was Benjamin Franklin the first transgender or cross-dresser in American history? I kid. Benjamin Franklin played this like epic, I guess, prank you can call it, on everyone pretty much. And I guess at the time he was 16 years old. He didn't know he was gonna go on to be one of the founding fathers of the country. And again, he was 16 years old. But anyway, when he was 16, he had an older brother that was the editor at a newspaper, and he wrote like a few pieces, I guess, for the paper, which was the Courant, Courant, and he was denied several times, and his brother pretty much wouldn't publish his shit, right? So what he did was, and his brother's name is James Franklin, if you guys want to look it up. What he did was he created a person known as Mrs. Silence Dogood. And I kind of very vaguely remember, like once I heard the name Silence Dogood, I remember learning something about this or hearing about this like in social studies in 5th grade or some shit like that. But I didn't remember like the actual details of the story. But it kind of rang a bell. So here's the story. His brother had a newspaper. They didn't want to publish his shit. So he created this pen name, Mrs. Silence Dogood, which was a middle-aged woman that was widowed. And he pretty much slid these notes or these letters under the editor's door. The editor being his brother. And the brother, James Franklin, wound up publishing it in the paper, and he promised, or she, Silence Dogood, promised to deliver letters every fortnight, which is back in the day talk for every 2 weeks. And he kept this up, or she kept this up, for like 6 months, and doing it every 2 weeks, and to the point that she became super popular. She got various marriage proposals through the newspaper. People used to write the paper and say that they would marry her because she's been through so much, and that she's a widow, and so she won't be alone, and like stuff like that. And all the while, and like she would speak of how, I read a couple of the letters. There's a total of 14 of these letters, and they were first printed in 1722, just to date it for you, or said it rather. And she spoke about things like losing her husband and her father, how he died, and how the mother died, how the father died like as they were coming to America for the first time. Her immigrant parents, her mother gave birth to her on the ship. The father, like from excitement, was like cheering on the ship, but then a big wave came, and he got knocked overboard, but he was too far off and drowned and couldn't be saved. And then her mother died shortly after they arrived in America, and then she was raised by someone else, and that master that she had, or guardian or whatever, they fell in love with her, and then they wound up dying. Like a whole bunch of like sick shit. She went on and on for 6 months pretty much, and like captivated the whole readership of the Courant. And eventually Benjamin Franklin's brother found out that it was him, his 60-year-old little brother, that was writing all this shit, and he fucked him up, so the story goes, and just completely beat Benjamin Franklin's ass. And I just thought that was a funny story to share with you guys. And I have a link in the episode notes, actually, of all of the Silence Do Good letters, if you guys want to check them out. It's pretty cool. It's pretty funny. I read a couple of them, like I think the first two I read completely, then I like skimmed through the rest of them, and it's pretty funny stuff. And he was a fucking pretty good writer at 16. Yeah, that's right. Tony Ortiz is saying that Benjamin Franklin was a pretty good writer. Yeah, I thought that was funny, so check that out. It's in the episode notes, guys. Lastly, the book that I recently read or listened to, like I told you guys, via Audible, which for anyone that doesn't like reading, which I fully admit to not before, back in the day, like I used to hate reading. It's not something I used to like to do until I actually started doing it. But I would go fucking months and months and months without like reading anything. But then if I started reading something, I would get like into it, like engulfed in it kind of. But I couldn't get myself to do it. Anybody that is still like that, I highly recommend Audible. Like I told you guys in the beginning, it's pretty dope, and you get through things fairly quickly. Books are like 6, 7, 8, 9 hours long, depending on like the size of them. Like this one, I think was like 6 to 7 hours, and it's like a 200 something page book, and it's chock full of really useful information. You can listen to it as many times as you want, bookmark stuff, fucking add notes, and I highly recommend it. If you guys don't want to go that deep into it, there's 2 other things that you can do, which is check out Carol Dweck's, and Dweck is spelled D-W-E-C-K, Carol, C-A-R-O-L. She has a TED Talk where she speaks about her book Mindset, which is this book that I'm referring to right now, and also a PDF, which I'm going to introduce to you guys in a bit, about the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which is very, very like well done and beautiful synopsis of the actual book, and pretty much like gets to the core of the entire thing. And it's like a 2-page PDF, and I also have a link to it in the episode notes. If you guys don't want to go as far as reading the actual book or checking out the TED Talk, which I also recommend, definitely at the very least check out the Mindset PDF, which again is in the episode notes. And for those of you that do not fuck with like podcasts too much, maybe you can either one, go on my website where I have like all the links there under the podcast section of the website. Look up the episode, and then like all the episode notes are there, and you could just click the links and you're right there on the computer or whatever, on your phone, tablet. But right now, like wherever you're listening to the podcast, you have something called episode notes. So if you click like view more, or like on the iPhone, for example, it's like that little eye information icon on the right side of every podcast. You could click that, and then you'll get like a drop down list, and you can click view description, and then in there all the hyperlinks which I added to the episode notes are in there, where you could just like click on them, and it'll open up in your browser on your phone, so you don't have to do too much work. You don't have to copy and paste shit or anything like that. Anyway, back to mindset. Carol Dweck, like I said, is the world's leading researcher in the field of motivation, and is a professor of psychology at Stanford University. What resonates most with me about this book is kind of like the ability to take ownership of your abilities, if you will, and realizing that your conscious effort towards a specific situation has a direct correlation on the outcome of it. And it's not to say, if you give your all, you get everything you want, because obviously it's not the case. But you do have to be in it to win it. You could kind of defeat yourself before you have a chance to even try something, just by the way you approach or think about a situation. I love books like this and ideas like this, because they, at the very least, help you begin to think about things in a different way that you otherwise wouldn't have. So I'm going to give you guys the gist of the book, which again is very perfectly summarized in the PDF, and which is its own standalone thing. And that's pretty much what I'm going to read from now. So you have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And she put together this PDF, and you have 5 categories in each of either the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. A person with a fixed mindset, to give you an example, are people who hold these beliefs and think that they are the way they are, and that's it. They're born with certain traits and attributes, and they're dumb at math, or they have a good head for science, and like they have that fixed mindset, like it's a finite thing that they're drawing from. And versus a growth mindset, which is people who hold the growth mindset, believe that intelligence can be developed, and that the brain is like a muscle that can be trained, which I couldn't agree with more. And there's countless examples throughout this book, and also books like Robert Greene's Mastery, where he goes through, and Malcolm Gladwell also writes a lot about this in books like Blink and The Outliers, and he pretty much like popularized he didn't come up with it, but he popularized the 10,000 hour rule. And it's pretty much a practical breakdown of how it's not just talent, and it's not just some people are born with it, some people aren't. It's about how Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan with just his talent if he didn't put in the countless hours of hard work. Beethoven wouldn't have been Beethoven if he didn't go through years and years. I think he was composing and writing music, I think, for like 10 years or 15 years before he did anything that was remotely good, supposedly, because he started like when he was like 5 and he was like super into it, and it wasn't until his 20s where he actually got like acclaim for it. But you can't discount that time in between, that shit that got you there. Same can be said about like any of the greats, you know, pick one, Leonardo da Vinci, fucking Freddie Roach. Robert Greene speaks about in Mastery how he was like a degenerate, washed up boxer that was an alcoholic and working at a call center, and got his shit together, turned things around, and became arguably one of the best coaches in boxing history. It wasn't because, you know, he was special and that's what, you know, he was destined and supposed to do. You know, he could have very well not done that and just stayed drinking and fucked up his life. Do you have to have some level of talent? Sure. But that's not any more a part of the equation than the hard work and dedication that you have to put into things, in my opinion. And getting back to mindset book and this PDF specifically, Carol Dweck illustrates these 5 different points in how a fixed mindset views something versus a growth mindset. And from there, you start, or at least I started, internalizing certain things and saying, you know, wondering how I look at certain situations within these like 5 categories. And you work, you know, once you're aware of things, you can consciously tweak them and say, oh shit, this is, you know, normally I would look at this like this, but if I apply this growth type of mindset versus a fixed type of mindset, I could potentially change the outcome of that I would otherwise have. And just to give you guys a better understanding, you know, definitely look at the PDF, but I'll give you guys like 1 or 2 of the points. For example, with a fixed mindset and challenges, which is one of the categories specifically, a fixed mindset avoids challenges, or a fixed mindset individual rather avoids challenges. And it says here, by definition, a challenge is hard and success is not assured. So rather than risk falling and negatively impacting their self-image, they will often avoid challenges and stick to what they know they can do well. Versus a person with a growth mindset who embraces challenges because they see the challenges as a vehicle for improvement, and they embrace those challenges because they know that they'll come out stronger on the other side. Then, you know, she goes into other categories like effort, and people with a fixed mindset tend to see effort as fruitless or worse, and people with a growth mindset see effort as a path to mastery. She goes into criticism, where people with a fixed mindset ignore useful negative feedback, and people with a growth mindset tend to learn from criticism, and they use that negative feedback as sources of information that they could then use to tweak and improve and grow their abilities. So yeah, I highly recommend the book. It was pretty insightful, and like I said, at the very least, just check out the PDF. It'll take you 5 minutes tops to read the entire thing, and it could yield some positive benefits for you in your life. And if it doesn't, then you just wasted 5 minutes. But if it does, you have something invaluable for life that just took you 5 minutes to get. So why the fuck not? Give it a shot. And that's it, folks. That's the episode for the week. Father's Day is coming up on Sunday, this Sunday coming up. So happy Father's Day to any Spun Today listeners out there that are fathers. And I appreciate you, even if your kids do not. you know what I decided to try, and you guys let me know what you think. I don't play like intro and outro music, or aside from like the little Spun Today jingle music type of thing to bring us in and out of the show. But I decided to play some actual music, something that I've been listening to lately, or that I just feel like putting on the podcast in the background of the outro section, where I do like all the like plugs and shit like that, just to make it a little bit more bearable and not as dry, and just whatever, I felt like trying it out. So let me know what you guys think about it. I'll probably drop it in after I finish recording this, so for your enjoyment. And it's not like an original idea. I don't want to like act like I'm taking credit for that, like I had some sort of fucking epiphany, because there's plenty of podcasts I listen to, like Ari's podcast or EMA Radio and stuff like that. They play music throughout their podcasts and like in the background of some of the segments of their podcast and stuff like that. So I decided to try it during this section, during the outro. So like I said, guys, let me try to get through this fairly quickly to let you go. Fill out the questionnaire located at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. It's 5 questions, pretty much about creativity and anything creative that you might be into, like writing or painting or anything like that. And you will be featured in a future episode of the Spun Today podcast. Check out there's a link in the episode notes if you want a direct link to it. If not, just go to spuntoday.com/questionnaire. You can remain anonymous if you choose to, or just put your name in there and I'll give you a shout out when I read your responses to the questions in a future episode of the podcast. Also, if you like the photos on my website that I have there for free, I fancy myself a subpar, mediocre at best amateur photographer, and I put a bunch of pictures up which are available for free if you guys want to check them out, either on my Facebook page, facebook.com/spuntoday, my Instagram @spuntoday, or at spuntoday.com/photography. If you happen to love any of those pictures or any of that photography, you can go to created.com/spuntoday, and you can actually order prints and posters and stuff like that of any of that photography. You can support the podcast financially by not having to pull out 1 red cent from your pocket, but some red cents will show up in my pocket, and I'll tell you how. Go to spuntoday.com/affiliate links and click on my Amazon banner or my iTunes banner or the PayPal donation banner. And by doing so, for example, if you click on the Amazon banner, it pretty much just takes you to Amazon's website. Not pretty much, it just takes you to Amazon's website where you do your shopping like you normally do. And then what happens is that Amazon sends me a couple pennies on the dollar for your purchase from their cut of your purchase, just for driving traffic to the website. And by doing so, you support the Spun Today podcast financially without it costing you anything extra, and I would really appreciate that. Why not? It's a couple extra clicks, right? Don't be a douchebag. After the countless hours of entertainment that you get from here, come on, guy. Next, rate and review the podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Pocket Casts, on Google Play, which we're now on. Check it out. And on any of your favorite podcatchers. Bottom line is that podcasts gain in popularity by them being obviously share it with your friends and family, and coworkers and shit like that. But mainly it gains in popularity by the ratings that it has on all of these websites or podcatchers like iTunes and Stitcher and stuff like that. So rate and review the podcast. I would appreciate that very much. subscribe to the YouTube page, which I would also appreciate very much. Feel free to add comments to any videos or episodes that are on the YouTube page. I will respond to them, or to you rather, if you want to get some conversation going. Hit me up on Twitter as well, at Spun Today on Twitter. And what else? 2 more things. Make Way for You. My very first book is published and waiting for you. It is a book of pretty much motivational and inspirational shit that I wrote pretty much for myself that got me to get off my ass and write the book. And it's individual pep talks, if you will. Like 72 or 78 of them. I don't remember exactly the number. And they, it's available in ebook format on Amazon, or paperback through Amazon as well. And you can, just search Make Way for You, tips for getting out of your own way on Amazon, or just go to my website, spuntoday.com/books, where you can click on it there. It'll take you to Amazon's page, and you can do your purchasing from there. If you do not have the $2.99 to spend on the book, then you don't, and I feel you, so I got you. Just drop in your email address at the bottom of that page, spuntoday.com/books, and I'll send you a full free copy of it via email. It'll be a PDF in PDF format, but you'll have the complete book, not just like a sample or anything like that. It is the full actual book. All I ask is that when you can, you do rate and review it on either Amazon or Goodreads, which I would appreciate. Lastly, subscribe to my Midday Monday boost letter, where I send out a newsletter every Monday at noon, letting you know what my favorite podcast of the week is, my favorite photograph of the week, my favorite quote of the week, my favorite word of the week, and my favorite video of the week. Just to give you a little Midday Monday boost, hence the name. So check that out at spuntoday.com/subscribe. And that's it, folks. As always, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.